the doubts that I had in my head were all mine. And I had to work to overcome that question that I always ask myself, am I good enough? And I write about that. That's a question that has dogged me for a good part of my life. Am I good enough to have all of this? Am I good enough to be the First Lady of the United States? And I think that many women, and definitely many young girls of all backgrounds, walk around with that question. But how I overcame that is how I overcome anything: hard work. So whenever I doubted myself, I just told myself, let me put my head down and do the work. And I would let my work speak for itself. And I still find that I do that. I still feel that at some level I have something to prove because of the color of my skin, because of the shape of my body, because of who knows how people are judging. But it takes some time and it takes some maturity to start having some successes under your belt where you realize, yes, in fact, I am good enough. Our first job in life is get to know ourselves. And I think a lot of times we don't do that. We spend our time pleasing, satisfying, looking out into the world to define who we are, listening to the messages, the images, the limited definitions that people have of who we are. And that's true for women of color, for sure. There is a limited box that we are put in. And if we live by that limited definition, we miss out on a lot of who we are. But it takes taking the time to know who you are to be able to deal with the onslaught of negative messages that you're bound to get. So for me, I came into this with a pretty clear sense of myself. And some of that comes with age, some of that comes with experience, some of that comes from being fortunate enough to have been raised by a loving mother, strong, focused, and a father who loved me dearly. So I fortunately came into this situation with a really clear sense of who I was. So when you hear the smack talking from outside the world, it's easy to sort of brush that off because I know who I am. And I think as women and young girls, we have to invest that time in getting to understand who we are and liking who we are. Because I like me. I've liked me for a very long time. So for a long time, I've had a very good relationship with myself. And we all like ourselves out here. But you gotta work to get to that place. And if you're going out into the world as a professional and you don't know who you are, you don't know what you want, you don't know how much you're worth, then you have to be brave. And then you have to, you have to count on the kindness and goodness of others to bestow that goodness on you when you should be working to get it on your own because you deserve it. I've loved myself for a long time, but there was a journey to get there. And some of it starts as a young girl when you confront your first bully, the first time somebody calls you out your name, as we would say. The first disappointments and failures that you have, how do you deal with that? What support systems do you set up for yourself? I always tell young girls, surround yourself with goodness. I learned early on how to, get the haters out of my life. You got to just sort of surround yourself with people who uplift you, who hold you up. And for whatever reason, I was lucky I had people like that. I had parents who held me up. Yeah, that was an advantage. But if you don't have that parent, that mother, that father, then you got to find it. You got to find those people because they're out there. I tell my mentees there is somebody out there who loves you and who is waiting to love you, and you just have to find them, and that means you have to make room for them. And if you're surrounded by a bunch of low-life folks who aren't supporting you, then there is no room for the people who do love you. There's this feeling like because you've been told that you're not good enough, that when you're in a room, you're wondering, well, how did I get here? If I've been told I'm not good enough. Women feel it oftentimes because society says you shouldn't be doing that, right? So you feel like an imposter in your own life. You feel like, especially if you've achieved success or you're in rooms that you're not supposed to be in because society has told you that, you think maybe somebody is going to discover that I shouldn't be here, right? That's imposter syndrome. Does that make sense?
It sure does.
So what I tell people is, okay, and all I can do is tell you this, because imposter syndrome it's a thing in your head. And, it's just like self-confidence. It's just like, it's like any internal characteristic. Much of it is what you practice telling yourself, and if you've heard that you're not good enough, that's what you're practicing. I'm just here to tell you it is not true. You wouldn't be here. You wouldn't be doing what you're doing if you didn't belong here. And I also have the advantage of, and I say this not with any level of arrogance or lack of humility, but I have been at so many powerful tables now, right? I've been at, I've worked in every sector. I've been a lawyer at a big law firm. I've worked at an academic university, been associate dean. I've been the vice president in community development at a hospital. I've been, I run a nonprofit organization. I've worked in the government. I worked with the mayor in the city of Chicago. I worked in the Department of Planning and Development. I was First Lady of the United States of America. I've seen these seats. I've served on corporate boards. I've done it, not all, but I've done a lot. And I'm just telling you, there are a lot of people who don't belong there. And every table, I thought it was me. Then after a little bit, I was like, nope, it's him. It's this guy who's sitting here talking. That's because they've been told they belong there. They don't. But there's a presumption. That's what I'm saying. It's in his head too. He's like, I belong here. I'm like, no, you don't. So all I can tell you is that the person sitting next to you was told, based on nothing, that he belongs there. And you were told that you weren't. Both things are wrong, oftentimes. So what I had to learn to do for myself was being, age helps you with imposter syndrome. So I'm 55 now, and I've seen it. I've been waiting to be as bad as people told me I would be, I've been waiting for when I was going to fall and mess up and fail. I've been waiting because that's what they said. I didn't belong at Princeton, right? I applied to Princeton University. My college counselor said, that's school's too much for you. Well, I applied anyway. I got in. I was waiting for it to be hard and for everybody else to be so much smarter. They weren't. They were just told that they belong there. Same thing was true when I applied to Harvard Law School. Maybe I shouldn't be there. Got there. Nope. They're not any smarter than me. So with all the practice of just going into the room that you weren't supposed to be in and being there and occupying those seats and just doing you and knowing that your thoughts are just as relevant, your experiences are just as important, your insight is just as valuable, so that you will share it and use it and practice being there. That's the work you have to do if you feel like an imposter, because he isn't giving up his seat easily. He isn't going to just say, I understand you don't feel like you belong here. Well, let me make room for you and sit you down and tell you the things you need to hear. They're not going to do that for you, because a lot of times they don't even want you there, even when they need you there. So you can't count on somebody else giving you the self-confidence. That's not how we work, and that's why you all are important, because you're not going to do that for some kid in your life. You're going to make sure that they never feel like an imposter. You're going to help them practice a different set of messages, so they aren't sitting here wondering where they belong in places where we need them. We need women and diverse minds and people who think differently and have different religious beliefs, because truth and the right answer comes from diversity of experiences. You're needed at those tables. So you can't sit there wondering whether you belong, because you'll waste your time in those seats and you'll hold your voice back and you won't be able to make change because you're waiting for somebody to tell you that you belong. I'm telling you, you belong. Practice a different set of messages.
Did you like the video?
Check out this other recent clip and be sure to subscribe and ring the bell to be notified about our last video. Watch Mindset Marvel's channel for the description of the video channel.